The polling doesn't look good for Donald Trump, but the polling's against Biden. That election is still a long way away. It's a little bit abstract, but what's not abstract is the race he has going on right now with Nikki Haley. And if you're wondering if she saw the recent polling, she did actually, particularly this one. The polling shows that while Trump is trailing Biden by a good bit, Nikki Haley is beating Biden by 5 points in a possible matchup. So now I want you to consider both of those simultaneously. Biden is up 6 points over Trump and down 5 to Nikki Haley. I mean, the combination of those two imply that Nikki Haley is a far strong, that's an 11-point swing. That's everything in an election doesn't generate an 11-point swing, but that's what we see right now between Nikki Haley and Donald Trump. She posted a tweet about this, showing the actual poll, saying a new Quinnipiac poll confirms it again in a head-to-head matchup. I beat Joe Biden and Republicans take back the White House. Donald Trump loses big and we end up with President Harris. I love that that's just implying Biden will die. A little bit morbid for a tweet, but is she wrong? I mean, I see this and I think, thank God Nikki Haley's probably not going to be the candidate because she would almost certainly beat Biden. What do you think?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here is probably, one of the pitfalls of having a two-party system, because I think in any other election, Nikki Haley is not really a strong political candidate, especially not for president. So I think what's happening here is neither of the front runners for either party is really likable right now. I think that nobody likes Trump. I think the Republicans are having a hard time getting away from Trump, and maybe they're looking to the next best thing, and that's Nikki Haley, even though she, as a candidate herself, is really not that strong or that great. And Joe Biden, he has a lot of dissension within his own party, So he has a lot of people who are upset with him because he hasn't fulfilled some promises. He hasn't taken some stances that are really popular within his base right now. I am no political strategist and I'm not a political consultant or anything like that. But I think if Biden really wants to be reelected in November, I think it would be wise for him to focus a little less on swinging Republican voters to his side and more on keeping the voters who voted for him in 2020.
I think that's a good strategy, but I would also say don't be so hard on yourself. The main difference between you and a political consultant or strategist is that you haven't yet put in, capitalized letters, political consultant or strategist in your Twitter bio.
Should I do
the
that?
Only difference. They don't go to like a doctoral program usually for that. It's just a thing they say.
It's a branding thing. All right, I'll do better at my personal branding.
Sure. There are some people obviously that do know what they're talking about, particularly in individual states, but they're not angels or whatever. They don't have divine knowledge. Now, we do want to talk about a few other findings in this before we get to more fun. So that's all the polling we've been talking about is in a two-way race, but we don't theoretically have a two-way race. We have third-party candidates. So if you did that race with all of these independent third-party candidates, then Biden would be at 39%. Donald Trump would be at 37%. RFK Jr. would be at 14%. Cornel West at 3%, and Jill Stein at 2%. So Biden still leads in that case. But obviously, all of this depends on what effect these would have on individual states, how it throws into potential chaos the Electoral College vote distribution. So it still looks good for Biden if you just look at the big picture, but I don't know exactly what that would mean once it's filtered through the fact that we don't really have a democracy in America. So bear that in mind. And I would also like to throw out that he's not getting very good marks on certain topics that Donald Trump could try to hit him on, like the economy. He's not polling really any better in that. And on immigration, they trust Donald Trump more. And I am going to try to be understanding of the American people in that usually when polling results come out like this, I don't think Biden's doing a good job. I trust Trump more. What that means is I think it's a problem. Biden's in charge right now, Trump's not. Because if you actually think that Trump is going to help you, I will remind you what state the economy was in at the close of the Trump years. And the only effect that he truly individually had on the economy was massive tax cuts for the wealthiest people in the country. And on immigration, sure, if you like the idea of moats stocked with alligators and people with machine guns manning sentry posts at the border, then sure, you should trust him more. But remember, there was still very high level of migration into America under Trump. They always want to forget that. Him being in charge doesn't suddenly stop that from happening. It just means that their attempts to curtail it are necessarily more barbaric, and we might end up with concentration camps. So what do you think about those? Some of the issue areas Biden is continuing to have some trouble.
Yeah, so I think that this is, again, one of the pitfalls, not only of the two-party system, but of our general electoral process, right? The fact that you have a president who can serve for 4 years and then he's up for reelection. And so the last year of his first term is really spent in campaigning for his next term so he can do more in the next 4 years. And it's just like exactly like what you said, right? If Joe Biden is the one who's in charge right now and something's happening that somebody doesn't like, then they're going to blame it on that guy, which is funny because, when their guy is in charge, they don't seem to do the same thing. And both sides are probably guilty of behaving that way. As far as like the border issue, for example, goes, I live in a border state. Whenever I talk to real, actual people who are very concerned about immigration and they're the most concerned about the border, these people don't have any direct experience with the border or with immigrants, really, right? In fact, they're really very isolated from the things that they seem the most concerned about. So they're getting all of these fear-based talking points about immigrants and the border from Fox News. And yes, all these people are very avid Fox News viewers. And I realize that this is anecdotal, but I think, in talking to real people, not on social media, it's really the best way to get an idea of what the voting public is actually thinking and feeling, maybe even more so than polls, even though I realize it's hard to do that on a large scale. So we know that they're using things like the economy and immigration to push voters to vote for Trump or just to vote for the other guy who is not Joe Biden. And I was just reading something this morning. There was a congressman from Texas, a Republican congressman, and he said that, of course, they're not going to do anything to help the situation at the border while Joe Biden is in office, because why would they do anything that would make him look good? Why would they want to do anything that Joe Biden could then take credit for, which would then in turn help his reelection chances? So again, we're seeing a problem with the system that we have where we really are at a standstill because neither party wants to make the other party look good, because it's not about governing America, it's about winning elections. And that's the electoral process that we have in this country.
100%. Yeah. Look, I think the numbers are going up with Republicans prioritizing this, including, as you say, people who they're nowhere near the border. The border doesn't affect them. Migrants don't affect them whatsoever, because the right is focusing on it to the exclusion of virtually every other topic. Which, hey, maybe that signals that they've gotten that they should back off of the whole woke thing being the only thing they talk about in politics. But they also, as you said, don't want to solve the problem, and they're being super transparent about why. And there is a big disconnect between what they are telling their voters about how they are in the next 5 minutes probably going to be raped and murdered by a migrant, and then saying, but I don't want to do anything about it because that'll help Biden. Those comments need to be put into ads and they need to be sent out there, because it's going to make them look so bad. You cannot, on the one hand, claim that something is this massive crisis, and then the other hand say that you're not going to solve it purely for political reasons. People are going to be angry about that. And justifiably so. Also, I think that your strategy of talking to people in real life is interesting. I have considered it from time to time, but I'm going to say no. I don't want to do that. That seems like
it's a whole scary. Lot of sometimes trouble. It's scary out there,
Yeah, I know. I'll leave it to Michael Shore. He can go talk to people in the real world. I'm going to stay on the internet.